since the airstrike against the TTP chief Nurwali Mahsood last week. Now we have video proof that Nurwali Mahsood is alive and kicking. This is the first video that he has put out officially and which proves that not only is he alive, not only has he survived the assassination attempt, the blatant assassination attempt by the Pakistan Air Force, which was carried out on a safe house in eastern Kabul last week, but he is also claiming in this video that he is currently inside the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region of Pakistan. This is on the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, where for the last week there has been a full-blown war going on between these two countries on either side of the Durand line. Currently, there's a 48-hour ceasefire, a very tenuous one that is holding on. But the video is hugely important because this is the first video proof, official proof that Nurwali Mahsood, who's the head of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, on whom there was this assassination attempt last Thursday night, Friday morning, he is now well and alive, and you can see that video proof that he's very much in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan. Let me go across to my colleague Anand, who has more details on this. So the significance of this will not be lost on the generals in Rawalpindi, Anand.
Yeah, good evening, Zaka, and good evening to all our viewers. But this exposes Pakistan, and it just upends the entire Pakistan military capability. How can Asim Munir even call himself a field marshal now? Because Nurwali Khan Mahsood is sitting in what Pakistan claims has been sovereignized. This is the entire Khyber Pakhtunkhwa tribal area, and look at the video. Nurwali Khan is sitting there and he's pointing to Pakistani military posts. That means that they have open access to the areas which are supposed to be under Pakistani military control, and this entire facade and this false propaganda and misinformation that has been set up by the Pakistanis now stands exposed, and they have been lying through their teeth. That's what it is. And look at what it's going to also showcase as far as the Pakistan military capability or inability altogether, that they not only can't protect their own borders, internally they have egg on their face, internationally they have egg on their face, because the Afghans are walking away with the narrative. They're not only driving away with the Pakistani military tanks, but now with Nurwali Khan Mahsood and Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan showing itself deep inside in Pakistani territory and also in control of these areas. It's absolute embarrassment that's being heaped on the Pakistani military establishment in Rawalpindi.
All right, Anand, we'll leave it at that. Also, this is significant because it comes bang in the middle of what is a 48-hour ceasefire, apparently brokered by Doha, by Qatar, and there are supposed to be talks between the Pakistani and Afghan leadership. Let's go back to those visuals. The reason why that video is important is because this is the first time in almost a week now. It was exactly Thursday night, Friday morning, where this attempted assassination happened on a safe house in eastern Kabul. On that man on your screen, that is the head of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, Nurwali Mahsood. Our Manoj Kumar Gupta, our investigations editor, had spoken to him on the phone just hours after the attack, and he confirmed to the world that he is alive and well. Now we have the first video proof that Nurwali Mahsood, the head of the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, not only managed to escape the assassination attempt, but he is very much in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is on the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which once again throws sand into the eyes of the generals. The generals will consider this as a huge embarrassment, that the man that they wanted to eliminate is very much alive and very much on their soil, and he's really cocking a snook at them. So this is something that we will keep an eye out on, whether or not this derails the ceasefire and the talks supposedly which are going to happen in Doha between Afghan government representatives and representatives of the Pakistan establishment. That we will keep an eye out on whether this video proof is going to derail those talks and derail this rather tenuous ceasefire. I want to now move on to the other big focus story on Brass Tacks. Tonight, US President Donald Trump has made yet another bizarre claim regarding India and its purchase of Russian oil. President Trump says he spoke with Prime Minister Modi on Wednesday, and he claims that Prime Minister Modi assured him that India will stop buying Russian oil. Now, this has been completely refuted by the MEA, but that hasn't stopped the Congress and the rest of the opposition parties from attacking the government, attacking the Prime Minister, and asking why are India's decisions being announced by the American president. The question to ask tonight, twofold. One, does the data hold true? Is there any evidence to suggest, as Trump is claiming, that India is actually decreasing its purchase of Russian oil in favor of other energy sources, including from the United States, in any substantial way. We will break down the data for you and show you how there is simply no backing to that claim. And number two, what may be the political implications of this, because the MEA has completely refuted what Mr. Trump has said. It is coming at a delicate time in the trade negotiations. There's the possibility of a meeting between the two leaders, the two principals, the US President and the Indian Prime Minister, end of this month in Kuala Lumpur on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. Will this public commentary by Trump derail the possibility of that meeting and perhaps even derail the negotiations, which are delicately poised at this point of time? An Indian team is currently in the United States to take forward those trade negotiations. But I want to first play out what Trump said and the reaction that has come through from the Indian side as well. But first, what Trump said.
He's assured me there will be no oil purchased from Russia. I don't know, maybe that's a breaking story. Can I say that? Would you say? There will be no oil. He's not buying his oil from Russia. It started. You know, you can't do it immediately. It's a little bit of a process. But the process is going to be over with soon.
On the question of whether there was a conversation or a telephone call between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, I am not aware of any conversation yesterday between the two leaders.
Now, every time Trump makes a claim, the Congress party jumps in and questions Modi. And once again, Rahul Gandhi has accused the Prime Minister of being too scared of Trump. He's posed some questions, and there is a mismatch between the questions asked and what the reality on the ground is. Number one, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has claimed that the Prime Minister allows Trump to decide on oil purchases, yielding to American pressure. The fact of the matter is, India continues to purchase Russian oil. In fact, in the month of September, Russia was the highest supplier of oil to India at about 34%. Rahul Gandhi says that congratulatory messages are sent despite snubs from Trump and the White House and Trump administration folks. But the fact is that Trump and Modi have spoken at least 3 times in the last 3 or 4 months, on the 17th of June, then on the 16th of September to wish the Prime Minister a happy birthday, and just earlier this month on the 9th of October when the Gaza ceasefire announcement was made public to the world. So they have been repeatedly speaking, and that's an indication that there is a degree of cordiality, there is a strong level of personal and diplomatic engagement. Rahul Gandhi also questioned the cancellation of the finance minister's upcoming visit to America for the IMF meetings, but the FM had cancelled her visit after the Pahalgam attack as well, showing that the cancellation was because of a domestic security crisis, not necessarily the fallout of any diplomatic or political issue. Rahul Gandhi also questioning why the Prime Minister skipped the recent Sharm el-Sheikh summit in Egypt, the peace summit, announcing the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas and sort of cementing it, solidifying it. The fact is that the Prime Minister skipped the summit because it was essentially just a praise Trump meeting where everyone from the British Prime Minister to the Canadian Prime Minister, and we saw the Pakistani Prime Minister almost supplicating in front of President Trump. That is not something you would want the leader of any country to be put in such a position. So this was a deliberate diplomatic decision taken at the highest level, aimed at not just, preventing the Prime Minister from becoming or getting into this kind of an embarrassing situation. Also, there are regional security implications. So India decided at the highest level to skip the Sharm el-Sheikh summit. But there was representation by the MOS-MEA. Rahul Gandhi also claims that the Prime Minister does not contradict Trump, whether it's on Operation Sindoor or whether it is now on the purchase of Russian oil. But the fact is, in the Parliament session, the Prime Minister had said that it was Pakistan that begged for a ceasefire, and the ceasefire was arrived at bilaterally between both countries and did not involve any third party.
वो कहते हैं कि मैंने कहा प्रधानमंत्री मोदी को कि भारत को रूस से तेल नहीं खरीदना चाहिए, और मुझे आश्वस्त किया गया है, मुझे आश्वासन दिया गया है कि भारत रूस से तेल नहीं खरीदेगा। प्रधानमंत्री चुप हैं। भारत सरकार के निर्णय भारत सरकार के द्वारा क्यों नहीं घोषित किया जाता? भारत सरकार के निर्णय राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप क्यों करते हैं बार बार?
देश की संस्कृति, जीवन मूल्य, परंपराओं से जिनका कोई वास्ता ना हो, वो देश की नहीं विदेश की ही मानेंगे, ऐसा मुझे लगता है।
All right, I want to go for a face-off on this. Anand Ranganathan, author, is joining us. Salman Soz is national spokesperson of the Congress Party. Salman, let me start with you. You know, Trump can claim whatever he wants to claim, and that's been refuted by the MEA spokesperson. But let's look at the hard data, right? For the months of July, August, and September, the amount of Russian oil that India imported in July 2025, India imported 1.6 million barrels per day. That amounted to 34% of all of India's oil imports in that month. In August of 2025, India imported 1.7 million barrels per day of Russian crude. That amounted to 37% of all of India's imports of oil in that month, August 2025. And in September 2025, again, it's at 1.6 million barrels per day, 34%, which is the highest that any country is supplying India with crude. So this whole idea that Trump has said that Modi will cut Russian oil just doesn't add up. The data doesn't add up.
Well, let's talk about what the American president has said, and then we can get to the data. He says that Prime Minister Modi has told him that India will no longer purchase or reduce its purchase of Russian oil. Now, that's obviously prospective. The question really is, why does the American president feel free to make remarks about India and what India will do or not do? That is not something for the United States president to say or do. The question is, when the president of America does these things, he repeatedly, to my mind, and to anyone who sees this objectively, is basically trying to belittle India, to in some ways show as if he's the boss of everybody. And I think what we need to do is basically lay down certain red lines. And we cannot have the president of America saying something, and then the Prime Minister of India basically hides behind the Ministry of External Affairs, some bureaucrats there, and doesn't say anything, nothing.
But Salman, there are two aspects to this. One is it's been refuted by an official Government of India spokesperson, right? So I'm going by what he has said. Number one. Number two, again, just because Trump happens to be the U.S. president doesn't mean that everything that he says or everything that comes out of his mouth is the gospel truth. Let's go by the data, and the data doesn't show that India has cut Russian oil.
Zaka, I did not say that Donald Trump, whatever he says, is the truth. In fact, for many things, he lies. We know it. Everybody knows it. That's not the question. The question is, an American president is talking about India's energy policy, our foreign policy, our national security, repeatedly.
Okay.
And the Prime Minister of India does not say a word, not one word. In fact, when the Gaza peace talks were being held, or they were close to some agreement, the Prime Minister very graciously sent out a congratulatory tweet. Mm-hmm. That time he feels that he can say something, praising Trump. And, you were talking about supplication. That, to my mind, also, when you're basically doing something without anybody asking you to do anything, that's also supplication.
Okay. Anand Ranganathan.
To me, why?
Okay.
No, just one second. Just one final point.
Quickly, Salman. Yeah.
Let me also recognize that Anand is not a BJP spokesperson. I wish BJP had sent somebody.
Okay.
And then Anand, I know he's a government supporter. That's okay.
No.
But let me just say one thing. Final point.
He can speak for himself.
Yes, he'll speak for himself.
Yeah.
But let me just say this. The Prime Minister of India should know that he represents on the foreign stage 1.4 billion Indians. He speaks for a powerful country, a country that has a respect of all the world.
Okay.
He should care for our dignity.
Okay. Let Professor Ranganathan respond to you. Salman and the Congress's contention is, why are India's policies, India's decisions being announced by the US president? And if he is lying, as the data seems to suggest, then the Prime Minister himself should come forth and refute those claims.
Well, good evening, Zaka, and good evening to my very dear friend Salman, who has pigeonholed me, but he didn't mention which government am I supporter of. I might be Congress government supporter, you never know. But anyway, look, मैं science की तरफ से हूँ, Salman. Look, the fact of the matter is, what would we as Indians rather put credence to? Words by the Prime Minister or his deeds? I will trust Trump as much as I will trust Dracula to keep his mouth shut at a blood donation camp. He's a born liar. The fact of the matter is, his puny cranium is not able to comprehend, Zaka, why, when the EU and most of Latin America has already succumbed to his bullying, why is Modi standing up to him? Modi's foreign policy maneuvers, honestly, the last couple of months have been spectacular to say the least. He is actually matching Trump transaction for transaction. Is this what Trump wanted? Well, he's getting it. Because Modi has, in continuing to buy Russian oil, not only exposed Trump's hypocrisy of imposing extra 25% tariffs selectively on India, even as the EU and the US continue to buy more Russian energy, but by going to Beijing and standing with Xi, he has shown Trump his place. We are as independent as we have ever been. It's been 2 months since those 25% extra tariffs were imposed. We continue to buy almost 40% of our oil imports from Russia. What does that tell you? Why are words more important than deed? Number two, more than Trump, the problem is the opposition leaders who are using him to get at Modi. Rahul Gandhi, for example. First, their dead economy concurrence when India is the fastest growing large economy, posting highest ever forex, exports, PMI, GST, and Sensex. And then Stalin concurring that Indian elites were profiteering from Russian oil. Not only is this strategy of opening the gates from the inside shameful, Zaka, it couldn't be further from the truth. Let me explain very briefly. Number one, Tamil Nadu's Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited has been refining 80,000 barrels per day of Russian oil over the past 2 years and then distributing half of it, 40,000 barrels per day locally inside Tamil Nadu. So those profiteering from this are not elites, but ordinary Tamilians. Additionally, Tamil Nadu has imposed upwards of 15% levy on fuel that goes in the state's coffers. So who is actually profiting from selling Russian oil to the tune of 7,000 crores? Stalin's government. Number two, the Indian government has directly earned upwards of $3 billion from Reliance as windfall for exporting refined Russian oil, some of it to America. The people who have profited from this are not elites but ordinary Indians. Three, finally, this is important. Even Salman would agree. India has saved $26 billion over the past 3 years by choosing Russian over Saudi oil. Not just because of discounted Russian oil, but also because increasing our procurement of it has lowered oil prices in general, saving us money for the rest of our oil procurement. Without that, our inflation would have risen cumulatively 1.47% beyond its actual level in those years, helping the poor and the disadvantaged, not the elite.
So,
this is the issue.
So, Salman, one of the points that Rahul Gandhi put out in the tweet this morning was, oh, why didn't the Prime Minister go to the Sharm el-Sheikh summit? You saw what happened at the Sharm el-Sheikh summit. You saw the kind of supplication that a Starmer or a Shahbaz Sharif had to do. It was basically all hail the king, and the new king in town happens to be Mr. Trump. Is that what you want to see the leader of India do? Is that what you wanted to see, the leader of the world's largest democracy to do? You may politically disagree with him, and that's fine. But no one wants to see the Prime Minister, go there and quote unquote bend the knee in front of another politician. So it was a good decision that he chose not to go.
Let me now just say that Anand talked about how we should look at the Prime Minister's deeds, not his words, and that's fine. And you also said that he should not be going to Sharm el-Sheikh and not be a supplicant, which is, of course, nobody would want that. But let me just say, just to remind us about words and deeds, and then I'll come to some of the responses to what Anand had said here. Here, let the people remind themselves.
Can you play it?
We can't hear it, Salman. I think either the video is stuck or the audio.
It's not a Chinese phone, is it, Salman?
No.
This is Abki Bar Trump Sarkar, and this is Prime Minister Modi when he was Prime Minister, and he was saying all the stuff. I just wanted to remind you, and no, this is not a Chinese phone. This is an iPhone, which probably is made in India. Now, let me respond to some of what Anand said. Anand says that we saved a lot of money. India saved a lot of money, and inflation was lower than it would have been. The question for the people of India should be, if India was saving a lot of money, Did you feel that at the pump when you're going for fuel, petrol, diesel, etc.? And not just, by the way, just these 3 years, not just these 3 years. Look back at what has happened since 2015. Until 2000, and if I'm not mistaken, about 21, 22, before all of this, about 16 lakh crores in fuel taxes had been collected. When prices were going, international prices, crude prices were falling, we kept our prices up. Yes. Now, I know Anand is a free marketer. I know he says that we should deregulate. That is what Mr. Jaitley, when he was finance minister, wanted to do.
Okay.
But they did not. They controlled prices, and basically people have been paying through their noses. And then Anand can say that, by the way, this is the fastest growing large economy, like the IMF says. I will tell you this. We have very deep concerns about the growth rates that our statisticians are putting out. Why? Let me tell you why. In this economy, for more than a decade, private sector investment is stagnant. Foreign direct investment as a share of GDP is now 0.8%. In this kind of, and I know Anand can tell you, he's a scientist. Without investment, you cannot create jobs.
Okay.
Cannot create jobs. No matter what happens, you cannot create jobs.
Okay. Now,
and
let me give the final word. Okay. Because we're also up against time. So 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
10 seconds. We don't want the Prime Minister to be a supplicant. We don't want the Prime Minister to do anything except to fight for the country's dignity. It is not too much to ask.
All right,
he has to fight
Professor Ranganathan. I think the first part of the question that Salman asked is valid. If we were doing this for economic reasons, and ostensibly we were, because Russian crude was cheaper than anything else available in the market, why weren't retail prices brought down?
That's a very logical question, but I did not expect my dear friend Salman, because he's an economist, he's been in the government, his party has run for 10 years. Because if he's wondering why those savings haven't reached consumers directly, the fact is no government, whether Congress or the BJP, ever does so via the fuel industry, even during price drops, since this sector funds public programs. It is a revenue source, like it or not. The profits and savings collected by the government here feed a fund that is tapped whenever it must provide hundreds of billions in aids or support across sectors. Salman, where else do you think those 100 million toilets originate, or those roads and health insurances? You know as well as I know. The cash cow is the petroleum sector. It's been used by the UPA, it's been used by the BJP. So for you to ask if we've saved money, where has all that money not gone to the consumer? It has lowered inflation, and it has gone into the welfare schemes that are helping the consumer, like was happening during the case of UPA. And finally, as for you showing that clip of Narendra Modi, let me fact check you. Narendra Modi was quoting Trump, saying, "Ab ki baar Trump sarkar." He was not validating and ratifying Trump.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Completely out of time. Fascinating conversation, gentlemen. Thank you so much. We should do this more often. Thank you for joining us, Salman Soz and Professor Anand Ranganathan. But let's break down the numbers. And I gave you a sort of overview of the import of Russian oil between the months of July, August and September. And there's nothing to suggest that there's any substantial drop. There might be a minor drop, but nothing substantial in terms of India dropping its purchase of Russian oil. So why then is Donald Trump making these claims which are completely bereft of facts? Not once, but on multiple occasions. His comments have been fact-checked by India, the government of India, the spokesperson of the MEA. Will this latest development now throw a spanner in the works of the ongoing trade negotiations? The Indian negotiating team is in the US even as we speak. And more importantly, there is a possibility of a meeting between both the leaders at the end of this month at the ASEAN summit in Malaysia. Will these public comments, first by Trump and a denial by the government of India, the MEA spokesperson, will that dampen the chances of that possible meeting end of this month?
We missed you. We missed you a lot.
US President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi had assured him that New Delhi would stop buying oil from Russia, calling it a big step in Trump's push to isolate Moscow over the war in Ukraine. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump said that he had flagged concerns with Prime Minister Modi about India's continued import of Russian oil.
Yeah, sure. He's a friend of mine. We have a great relationship. He just said that 2 days ago, as you know. We have a great relationship. No, we were not happy with him buying oil from Russia, because that lets Russia continue on with this ridiculous war where they've lost 1.5 million people, by the way. Russia's lost 1.5 million people, soldiers mostly. This is a war that should have never started, but it's a war that Russia should have won in the first week, and they're going into the 4th year. And I want to see it stop. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop.
However, New Delhi has not confirmed Trump's claim that India will halt Russian imports.
See, on the issue of energy sourcing, we have made a statement. This was put out in the morning today. We would request you to look at that particular statement for the questions that you have. On the question of whether there was a conversation or a telephone call between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, I am not aware of any conversation yesterday.
Now, this claim by Trump is a high-stakes gamble. If it is true, and so far there is no evidence to show that there is a modicum of truth in what Trump is claiming, but if it is, then it's a dramatic shift in Delhi's energy diplomacy and also a significant shift in its pragmatic relationship with Moscow. But the public record that's been put out by both parties, as well as, of course, the available trade data, does not show any significant drop in India's import of Russian oil. Also, India's strategic constraints make any immediate unconditional pledge to cut Russian oil by Modi extremely unlikely. India remains the world's 3rd largest oil importer after America and China. After Western sanctions on Moscow pushed Russian crude oil onto the discounted market, Indian refiners have secured long-term commercial deals that delivered very cheap oil at very attractive freight terms. Rewriting those commercial arrangements overnight would impose a large cost on refiners as well as on consumers. Crude oil supply relationships are not simply political statements like the one that Trump has made. They are physical supply chains and contractual allocations. No overnight change is possible there, particularly when the commercials are still attractive for buying cheap Russian crude.
It's all price sensitive. I mean, if cheaper energy is available, and it's a very complicated game. It's not something that I can sit and determine. There is a cost of production per barrel, international price, which you all monitor in terms of one system or the other system. Then you add to that the cost of insurance, the cost of freight, the dollar exchange rate, and several other things. And then it works out. So I think the good news is that we import from a large number of sources. New suppliers are coming on the market. By the way, I mean, to those of you who are listening to me after a long time, there is more and more energy coming on the global market, and more is coming from the Western Hemisphere.
There is also the geopolitical angle. India courts its strategic partnership with the United States while at the same time maintaining a long and multifaceted relationship with Russia when it comes to defense, nuclear energy, and regional diplomacy. India's policy has been to navigate a multipolar balancing act. A sudden, publicly announced abandonment of Russian energy ties under American pressure would risk political blowback at home, something that no prime minister can afford. Also, Russian President Putin is expected in India in the first week of December. The Indian government would not make such a shocking and public concession just ahead of a high-profile visit. Any supply shock or price rise could also follow a rushed exit from Russian crude will be politically costly in India, particularly ahead of the keenly fought Bihar state elections. Leaders calculate both strategic payoff and also domestic political calculations. A pledge that raises petrol and diesel prices will be a hard sell ahead of crucial state elections. But the numbers also belie Trump's claims. A Reuters snapshot last month said that Russia's share had dipped slightly in August and in early September after earlier peaks, but India still remained a major buyer of Russian oil. More than a third of India's oil supplies in the month of September came from Russia. India was Russia's second biggest customer after China. An Economic Times compilation from April to September 2025 showed an 8% year-on-year fall in Russian crude. that in the first 6-month period of 2025, there was some moderation in India's purchase of Russian oil. India used to import up to 2 million barrels per day from Russia at its peak. Now that has somewhat moderated to around 1.5 million barrels per day. The bilateral relationship between America and India has been a bumpy one in recent months. A mix of public pressure, tariff threats, and of course, repeated claims by Trump of him mediating in the India-Pakistan conflict earlier this year has soured ties. Something that Trump has repeated at the White House this week, but something that India contests very dearly.
We stopped a lot of these wars using trade. We had, as an example, India and Pakistan were going at it really hard. Our 7 planes were shot down. It was going to happen. Bad things would happen. And I was talking, both of them, about trade. And I said, how are we doing with this? I said, sir, we're doing very well by trade. Well, if you're not going to do well, I'm not going to do a trade deal. Let's say, stop the war. And I got him on the phone and I said, listen.
All right, I want to go across to Professor Brahmachalani, strategic affairs expert. The concerning thing is not so much, what Trump said, and clearly the government of India through the MEA spokesperson has refuted it, but it's the timing of what he has said and when he has said it, because this is coming at a time when the trade negotiations are at a delicately balanced stage. The negotiating team is in the US right now, and they were hoping that they can unveil something when the two leaders could meet at the end of this month in Kuala Lumpur on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. Now this public pronouncement by Trump and a public denial by India, how does that play out over the next couple of weeks? Does it put the meeting itself in jeopardy?
Saka, first you summed up the India-Russia relationship and why it's unlikely that India would abruptly halt purchases of Russian energy. And it's important to remember why Trump keeps repeating the same claims again and again. And there is a pattern, not just a pattern, but a method to this, because by repeating the same false information again and again, he creates this illusion that this false information actually may be true. At least his base at home would believe that false information. This is the same strategy he used to repeatedly claim to question the legitimacy and results of the 2020 presidential election. So about 40% of Americans today believe that the 2020 presidential election was rigged against Trump. Similarly, how many times has he repeated the same claim that he used the trade sanctions threat to end the India-Pakistan 3-day war? He has repeated that, I think, at least more than 100 times publicly. Yeah. And again, he repeated that this week. By repeating that again and again, he seeks to turn an untruth into a fact. And unfortunately, this pattern not only is unprecedented, it undermines public confidence in established facts. And in the US, his claims, patent lies, are also undermining confidence in government institutions and the media. But coming back to his specific claim in relation to India and Russian oil purchases, look at it more broadly, Zaka, that he has not managed to even get America's allies in Europe to end their Russian energy purchases. And yet, he wants to dictate India's oil import policy. Look at the paradox. Europe is America's close ally. And if you look at Europe's purchases of Russian energy, by Europe I mean the EU plus Britain, their monthly purchases of Russian energy exceed India's oil imports from Russia. And yet, despite saying in public that Europe should stop buying Russian energy, he has exerted no pressure on Europe to stop buying Russian energy. He has singled out India. India is the sole and only target of Trump's secondary sanctions over Russian energy imports.
Okay.
So he is clearly targeting India. And even as he claimed that Modi has assured him that India will stop buying Russian oil, he has not signaled a willingness to end those secondary sanctions on India, which are in the form of 25% additional tariffs on Indian goods.
But tell me, Professor, it also comes at an interesting time, and I guess we don't talk about it enough here in the Indian media, but it's been all over the Western press. China last week deciding to put significant export controls on rare earths. Trump had a lashing out reaction last Friday. The markets fell. They're still trying to figure out whether this is chapter 2 in the trade war between China and the United States, the two biggest economies. Do you think that India has an opportunity here to try and close out the trade negotiations with the United States, which have been hanging fire for the last 6 months?
You ask a very good question, Zaka. Look at the contrast between China's response and India's response. China is leveraging its strengths. In fact, it's mirroring America's punitive actions in order to create leverage in negotiations with Washington. While India is trying to be the good boy by refraining from any kind of counter retaliation against the US. For example, no counter tariffs. This is in contrast to Trump's first term, when he slapped some trade punitive actions against India, including stripping India of its GSA trade status and putting tariffs on Indian steel and aluminum exports to the US. The Modi government at that time imposed targeted counter tariffs on 28 American products, which galvanized trade negotiations because Washington came under pressure from American exporters. And those trade negotiations eventually led to a trade deal right just before the 2023 G20 summit in New Delhi. This time, India has decided not to use any kind of negotiating leverage and to enter negotiations without going empty-handed virtually into the negotiations. So I'm concerned about the fact that whatever India was offering until July, India may be now forced to offer cede more ground in the trade negotiations.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Professor Brahmachalani, always a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18. All right, I want to shift focus now to some more domestic stories and this war for investments, war for attracting the best IT companies in the world between Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. They're continuing to have this bitter exchange over the condition of roads, investment climate, infrastructure, first in Bengaluru, and the impact that it's having on businesses and industries in India's Silicon Valley. Today, Nara Lokesh, who is the IT Minister of Andhra Pradesh and who, of course, proudly displayed the fact that Google has decided to invest $15 billion in building one of the world's biggest AI data centers in Vizag or Visakhapatnam. Today, he took a latest swipe, and that was something like this. He said on Twitter, "Some neighbors are already feeling the burn of our investments. Everyone knows that Andhra food is spicy. Now they're feeling the burn of our investments." This follows Google picking Andhra Pradesh over Karnataka to invest $15 billion over the next 5 years in building one of the world's largest AI data centers. Prime Minister Modi, too, lauded Google's decision today. He was on a visit to Andhra Pradesh. He claimed that the project will establish Visakhapatnam as an AI connectivity hub.
इस प्रोजेक्ट से विशाखापट्टनम एक एआई और कनेक्टिविटी हब के रूप में स्थापित होगा। ये केवल भारत ही नहीं बल्कि पूरी दुनिया को सेवा देगा। मैं इसके लिए आंध्र के लोगों को विशेष बधाई देता हूं और चंद्रबाबू के विजन की भूरी भूरी प्रशंसा करता हूं। भारत के विकास के लिए आंध्र प्रदेश का विकास जरूरी है और मैं मानता हूं आंध्र के विकास के लिए रायलसीमा का विकास भी जरूरी है।
Because they are holding the lion's share in the government, because they are become very vital in the government, they are getting more money. That's it, no? So if the more money was not coming from the central aid, such tweet would have come. Without taking any central aid, are they doing it? Let him tell, no, what is the contribution coming from the central and the state. If they are doing from the one kitty, then he can talk about all such things. He is getting some ice cream from top. So if ice cream is coming, anybody would love to eat, right? Even a kid wants to eat an ice cream. So it's simple as that. The more money is flowing from central government, the reason is for what? Because they have got more number of MPs where the government becomes unstable. Simple thing, any common sense is that that's not a great about him.
All right, I want to go across to Mr. Sachin Kumar. He's a prominent Bangalorean and a chartered accountant. I want to deal with the investment climate, the infrastructure issues in Bangalore in just 1 second, because we've been talking about it for a number of years. But things have now got to a head where serious AI investment is moving in the direction of Andhra Pradesh, or moving outside of Bengaluru. Bengaluru is no longer being seen as this premier investment destination. Vizag could emerge over the next 10, 15, 20 years as the sort of nodal center when it comes to the AI revolution. Much like in the last 20, 30 years, Bangalore became the nodal hub of the IT revolution. How much of a fear there is with regards to this? Because it seems like the people who are running the affairs, politically speaking, in Bengaluru are not really concerned about this. They are happy to sit on, whatever past investments were made in the state, and if the roads are going to the dogs and the infrastructure is crumbling, then so be it. They don't seem to care much about it.
Yeah. Zaka?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Sachin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right, Zaka. See, I'm a proud Bangalorean, and when I heard this news of Google investment of $15 billion going to Andhra, something made me sit up and ask questions. What is that going wrong here, and what is that is right for Google there, Andhra Pradesh? To my mind, it is more than an infrastructure. Infrastructure, to my mind, is only it's a symptom. The cause, to my mind, is the policy. In fact, we have our leaders making tall promises, but those tall promises have to be actioned. Only then we can see these results. As far as cause of concern is concerned, I don't see that, because if you look at Bangalore or Karnataka for that matter, of 9 lakh crore of exports that happens in IT sector, I think Bangalore contributes to the extent of about 4 lakh crore. And as far as GCCs are concerned, 52% of the GCCs come from Bangalore. So the concern is not that is it losing out to Andhra Pradesh, but then there is definitely a concern that in this competition, if you are not agile as Andhra Pradesh is, if you are not disciplined as Andhra Pradesh is, then it would be quite difficult for Bangalore or for Karnataka to retain this particular position, what we have been enjoying so far. And so that's what I have to say.
But tell me, Mr. Sachin Kumar, if you're an investor, forget about the biggest investors in the world, right? Google, Microsoft. Even if you're a medium-sized investor who wants to put in money in India's IT/AI/startup scene, and you see in Bengaluru, the pioneers of this over the last 20 years, whether it's a Kiran Shaw or a Mohandas Pai, and they are being publicly rebuked by the people who are running the administration of the city. What signal does that send to you as a potential investor?
Yeah, right. As far as seeking accountability from the government is concerned, I think that should not be looked at as a confrontation. I think to that extent, I agree that seeking accountabilities are right. At the same time, it is the responsibility as a citizen of this country and citizen of Bangalore. I think it is not only what government can do, what is that we can do with the government. That is what is important here. So there are many things that we, as a Bangalorean, as a proud Bangalorean, I am ready to contribute myself. So much so that the industry leaders are ready to contribute for the growth of, for putting this infrastructure problems in place. To find a solution for these infrastructure problems. Having said that, I also feel that, the kind of the rebukes that we saw is something is a little unwarranted. And that could have been avoided. And the best way could have been to invite them, like it has happened in earlier occasions. They could have been invited. Discussions can be had, and probably a solution can be found out, or this could have been the better approach, is what I feel, Zaka.
Okay. All right. Sachin Kumar, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. This whole rivalry between Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh is not a new one. I mean, you go back 20, 25 years ago, even between S.M. Krishna and Chandrababu Naidu, both of whom were chief ministers in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was this competition between Bangalore and then Hyderabad as to who would get more IT investments, who would be more attractive as an IT destination. It's now manifested into, the new Andhra Pradesh, not the old United Andhra Pradesh, but the new Andhra Pradesh versus Karnataka. And for the moment, at least, it seems like the new Andhra Pradesh seems to be, at least when it comes to the optics of it, when it comes to rolling out the red carpet for such private investment, they seem to be having the upper hand. We're going to take a quick break here on the program. When we come back on the other side, first it was the attacks on the boats off the coast of Venezuela, but now it seems like Trump has authorized the CIA for a direct hit at the top man, the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. That on the other side.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
But the other top story, of course, is the battle for Bihar. Well, fast-paced developments taking place with the first phase of the nomination now ending. It's just 24 hours really left to go for the first phase nomination deadline to end. Now, the BJP obviously has moved ahead. It's released its third and final list. The JDU has also released its candidate list. In the Mahagathbandhan, the Congress has named 12 candidates. The opposition bloc is yet, however, to announce their seat-sharing formula. We are learning that Congress and the CPI are eyeing the same seats in Begusarai, which is what is delaying the announcement. And also the fact that no meeting has yet been held between the top leaders of the Mahagathbandhan. In a fresh setback for the opposition, Pashupati Paras, the party RLJP, will be contesting elections in an alliance with overseas party AIMIM in Bihar. NDA is all geared up. Suspense, however, continues within the opposition camp as far as the seat-sharing final formula is concerned. Let's listen in to all the reactions, and I'm going to go across to my colleague, Shireen.
बिहार की एनडीए सरकार ने हाल में जो महिला रोजगार योजना शुरू की है, उससे बहनें बहुत खुश हैं। बिहार की 1 करोड़ 20 लाख बहनों के खाते में हर एक बहन को 10,000 रुपए भेजे जा चुके हैं। आप इन बहनों से मिलिए, आप इन बहनों को ये जरूर बताइए कि ये पैसा सिर्फ एक बार की मदद नहीं है, ये नया रोजगार करने का प्रोत्साहन है और अब ये पैसों के मालिक वही है। आप उन्हें बताइए कि इस पैसे से वो जो काम शुरू करेगी उसे आगे बढ़ाने के लिए और उस काम को देख करके हम और भी मदद करने वाले हैं।
लगातार 2 बार से राघोपुर की जनता जो है यहाँ पर भरोसा की है और जनता जो है मालिक है और ये तीसरी बार जो है हमने नामांकन जो है राघोपुर से की है। बेरोजगारी को जड़ से हमको मिटाना है, बिहार को आगे ले जाना है। लोग त्रस्त हो चुके हैं भ्रष्टाचार से, अपराध से। अब बिहार जो है अपराध मुक्त, भ्रष्टाचार मुक्त प्रदेश बनना चाहता है।
रणनीतिक रूप से जो बिगड़ी हुई चीज थी अब बन रही है क्या?
मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि स्थिति स्पष्ट नजर आती है। भाजपा ने सभी उम्मीदवार घोषित कर दिए, एनडीए के उम्मीदवारों की घोषणा हो गई, लेकिन महागठबंधन में जूते चप्पल चल रहे हैं, कपड़े फाड़े जा रहे हैं, मार पिटाई हो रही है। लालू प्रसाद यादव मुर्दाबाद के नारे लग रहे हैं, कांग्रेस के प्रभारी को पीटा जा रहा है, कहीं कुछ और चल रहा है। तो एक तरफ से एनडीए आगे बढ़ रही नजर आ रही है, दूसरी ओर आपसी उलझनों में फंसकर महागठबंधन रह गया है और यहाँ तक कि दलितों का अपमान सीधे रूप में नजर आता है। पहले लालू प्रसाद यादव जी ने अंबेडकर जी के आगे पांव रख के, बिल्कुल फोटो के सामने पांव रख के उनका अपमान किया।
US President Donald Trump has ordered the CIA for covert operations against Venezuela, reigniting tensions in Latin America. US forces have already conducted multiple strikes on suspected drug-carrying boats off the coast of Venezuela in recent weeks. Now, it seems like he's given the final go-ahead for regime change of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. I decode what this means.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer?
US President Donald Trump has secretly authorized the CIA to conduct covert action in Venezuela, according to the latest reporting by the New York Times. With this, President Trump is stepping up his campaign against Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela's authoritarian leader. The authorization for covert operations by the CIA is the latest step that Trump has taken in his intensifying pressure campaign against Venezuela. For weeks, the US military has been targeting boats off the Venezuelan coast, which it accuses of transporting drugs into America. In all, so far, in 4 separate attacks, as many as 27 people have been killed. American officials have been clear. Their end goal is to drive Nicolas Maduro out of power. Trump acknowledged this week at the White House that he had authorized covert action by the CIA. He also said that the United States was considering strikes inside Venezuelan territory.
I authorized for 2 reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And as soon as I heard that, I said, a lot of these countries, they're not the only country, but they're the worst abuser. And they've entered they've allowed thousands and thousands of prisoners, mental institution, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, emptied out into the United States. We're bringing them back, but that's a really bad, and they did it at a level that probably not, many countries have done it, but not like Venezuela. They were down and dirty. And the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela. And a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that. But we're going to stop them by land also.
Any strikes inside Venezuela would be a significant escalation. After several of these boat strikes, the Trump administration made the point that these operations had taken place in international waters and therefore it was legit. But the new authorization to the CIA would allow the spy agency to carry out lethal operations inside Venezuela. The agency would be able to take covert action against Maduro or his government, either unilaterally or in parallel with a larger military operation. It is not known yet whether the CIA is planning any specific operations inside Venezuela. But the latest development comes even as the US military is planning its own possible escalation, drawing up options for President Trump. Strikes inside another sovereign country would be a violation of the UN Charter, but that has rarely ever stopped Trump. The scale of the American military buildup in Venezuela is substantial. There are currently as much as 10,000 American troops in the region. Most of them happen to be at US military bases in and around Puerto Rico. But there is also a contingent of US Marines on amphibious assault ships. In all, the US Navy has as many as 8 surface ships and a submarine in the southern Caribbean Sea. In a statement, Venezuela has rejected Trump's rhetoric. It has accused him of seeking to legitimize regime change with the ultimate goal of appropriating Venezuela's petroleum resources. Venezuela also said it planned to raise the matter at the United Nations Security Council, calling Trump's actions a grave violation of the UN Charter.
No al cambio de régimen que nos recuerda tanto a las fallidas guerras eternas de Afganistán, Irak, Libia y pare usted de contar. No a los golpes de Estado dados por la CIA, que nos recuerda tanto a los 30.000 desaparecidos por la CIA en los golpes de Estado contra Argentina, al golpe de Estado de Pinochet y los 5.000 jóvenes asesinados y desaparecidos. ¿Hasta cuándo golpes de Estado de la CIA? América Latina no los quiere, no los necesita y los repudia. Así que la paz se gana, no tengo ninguna duda. la paz se preserva.
Donald Trump ordered an end to all diplomatic talks with Nicolas Maduro and his government earlier this month as he grew frustrated with the Venezuelan leader's failure to accede to American demands to give up power voluntarily. There was also a continued insistence by Venezuelan officials, Maduro included, that his country or his government had no part in drug trafficking to America. Richard Grenell, who is a special presidential envoy, had been leading the negotiations with Maduro, but during a meeting earlier this month with senior military commanders, Trump called Grenell and instructed him that all diplomatic outreach, including talks with Maduro, be put off indefinitely. Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, has called Maduro an illegitimate leader. Rubio had described Maduro as a fugitive from American justice and that the United States has increased the reward for Maduro to $50 million on his head. A White House official also said that Trump was prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from entering the United States. The Trump administration's strategy on Venezuela, developed by the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, along with John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, aims to oust Maduro from power. Trump even commented about that when he congratulated the recent Nobel Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, who has been politically opposed to Maduro for over a decade now. The CIA has said very little about what they intend to do in Venezuela, but the director of the agency, Ratcliffe, has promised that the CIA would become much more aggressive under his leadership. During his confirmation hearing earlier this year, Ratcliffe said that he would make the CIA less averse to risk and more willing to conduct covert action when authorized by the president. But this is not the first run-in. Early on in his second term, Trump had alleged that a Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, and their members had been specifically released from prison and sent into the United States to commit crimes. In March, Trump proclaimed that the TDA gang, which was founded in Venezuelan prison, was a terrorist organization and they were conducting irregular warfare against the United States under the orders of Nicolas Maduro. While the US military continues to operate, these kinds of strikes against the boats which were carrying drugs from Venezuela are generally made public. But CIA covert operations are typically kept secret. Some, like the CIA operation in which the Navy SEALs killed Osama bin Laden in 2011, those were made public. The last time the CIA publicly acknowledged removing a head of state was in 1989, when the ruler of Panama, Manuel Noriega, was removed unceremoniously. Today, almost 40 years later, that mantle could very soon fall on Nicolas Maduro and the government of Venezuela, who could be staring at a possible regime change.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
But the other top story, of course, is the battle for Bihar. Well, fast-paced developments taking place with the first phase of the nomination now ending. It's just 24 hours really left to go for the first phase nomination deadline to end. Now, the BJP obviously has moved ahead. It's released its third and final list. The JDU has also released its candidate list. In the Mahagarbandhan, the Congress has named 12 candidates. The opposition bloc is yet, however, to announce their seat-sharing formula. We are learning that Congress and the CPI are eyeing the same seats in Begusarai, which is what is delaying the announcement. And also the fact that no meeting has yet been held between the top leaders of the Mahagarbandhan. In a fresh setback for the opposition, Pashupati Paras, the party RLJP, will be contesting elections in an alliance with overseas party AIMIM in Bihar. NDA is all geared up. Suspense, however, continues within the opposition camp as far as the seat-sharing final formula is concerned. Let's listen in to all the reactions, and I'm going to go across to my colleague, Sherin.
बिहार की एनडीए सरकार ने हाल में जो महिला रोजगार योजना शुरू की है, उससे बहनें बहुत खुश हैं। बिहार की 1 करोड़ 20 लाख बहनों के खाते में हर एक बहन को 10,000 रुपए भेजे जा चुके हैं। आप इन बहनों से मिलिए, आप इन बहनों को ये जरूर बताइए कि ये पैसा सिर्फ एक बार की मदद नहीं है, ये नया रोजगार करने का प्रोत्साहन है और अब ये पैसों के मालिक वही है। आप उन्हें बताइए कि इस पैसे से वो जो काम शुरू करेगी उसे आगे बढ़ाने के लिए और उस काम को देख करके हम और भी मदद करने वाले हैं।
लगातार 2 बार से राघोपुर की जनता जो है हम पर भरोसा की है और जनता जो है मालिक है और ये तीसरी बार जो है हमने नामांकन जो है राघोपुर से की है। बेरोजगारी को जड़ से हमको मिटाना है, बिहार को आगे ले जाना है। लोग त्रस्त हो चुके हैं भ्रष्टाचार से, अपराध से। अब बिहार जो है अपराध मुक्त, भ्रष्टाचार मुक्त प्रदेश बनना चाहता है।
रणनीतिक रूप से जो बिगड़ी हुई चीज थी अब बन रही है क्या?
मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि स्थिति स्पष्ट नजर आती है। भाजपा ने सभी उम्मीदवार घोषित कर दिए, एनडीए के उम्मीदवारों की घोषणा हो गई, लेकिन महागठबंधन में जूते चप्पल चल रहे हैं, कपड़े फाड़े जा रहे हैं, मार पिटाई हो रही है। लालू प्रसाद यादव मुर्दाबाद के नारे लग रहे हैं, कांग्रेस के प्रभारी को पीटा जा रहा है, कहीं कुछ और चल रहा है। तो एक तरफ से एनडीए आगे बढ़ रही नजर आ रही है, दूसरी ओर आपसी उलझनों में फंसकर